As you know, we are here to have a one-on-one conversation, rather I'm here to have a one-on-one conversation with Rajiv Bakshi, who is the CEO of Big Synergy. But before we really start in conversation, just a brief introduction. Actually, you know what? I'd like you to introduce yourself.
You give me all the work, okay, fair enough. I lead Reliance Entertainment's Big Synergy division. As many of you may be familiar, it's about a 30-year-old outfit, so we've been around for a long time. We produce everything from fiction to non-fiction to game shows to web series to regional fiction to soaps. Whatever genre you may think of, we produce and we work in that. It's my recent kind of move. Prior to that, I used to work for a mobile company. We used to sell smartphones in the country. And much before that, for about long 13 years, I worked with Discovery. I was the head of products and marketing and brand, so I essentially launched all the channels in India. So whether it's Discovery, TLC, Discovery Kids, and all of that. So by and large, my background is content, brand marketing, and I'm very happy to be here today. So back to you.
Thank you, Rajiv. So, Rajiv, just to start the conversation, like you said, Big Synergy has been around since 1988, and if you look at the whole journey of the media space, that was then just Doordarshan, and then slowly, satellite TV came in, and everything is changing now. To people are figuring out, will people even want to watch cable TV, and is it all OTT? What do you think of this whole, transformation that's been happening over literally 30 to 40 years?
It's too long a period for me to say. I'm not that old first. So, but I certainly believe that I'll take one comment from what you said earlier, which is about television or cable dying or something like that. I don't see anything kind of becoming smaller, it's only becoming bigger. Certainly the change shape, the contours change, the measurement matrix change. By and large, I don't see cable TV going anywhere soon in India, at least. Even if I see a reference of US, I don't see any cable company kind of doing badly. Certainly there's a challenge of OTT, but I think both are pretty much coexisting. What will happen in 10 years to 15 years is very difficult to kind of do a prophecy sitting here. From what we can see for the next 3 to 5 years, both seem to be growing very well. Certainly, there is a little bit of competition between the two because the audience is the same, but audiences also behave differently in the parts of the day. You and I behave differently when there's an event in the country. You and I behave very differently when there's a live event in the country. You and I behave very differently when there's a crisis in the country. Our response to content, television, viewership, etc. also changes accordingly. We become different animals on different days. We're not consistent ourselves. So it's not to say that you and I are absolutely going to take one medium, one digital platform for all our life, and that's how it is going to be. We all evolve, and therefore the industry is also evolving.
Yeah, actually, if you take the example of what's happened with the IPL, right? I mean, as soon as the IPL finished, all we heard about was the kind of views that Hotstar got. And at one time, it used to be about how many people watching it on TV, and suddenly it was all about how many people watched it online. So, I mean, if you think about it from an advertiser's point of view, is it actually a better scenario that there's both, there's TV and, digital to be able to exploit?
Well, advertisers basically largely, yes, all of us eventually change advertisers. And when I was in the TV business, we used to, of course, serve the advertisers through audiences that we brought through different products. So advertisers certainly are the key kind of decision maker in this game. And advertisers of all kinds, sometimes they want a digital phenomena, sometimes they want television. Sometimes television delivers impact much bigger than sometimes digital can deliver. Digital can deliver, as one says, is more one-to-one, more measurable, more kind of responsive kind of matrix. But impact, I would still believe that television does deliver impact much more than digital at the moment. But not to say that digital is not doing its job. Digital is doing a fantastic job. I think it's about 30% of the ad market today is already digital. Growing should be about maybe 30 to 40 years, 40%, I beg your pardon. So digital certainly is growing at maybe 2x or 3x of the traditional media, so to speak. But to say that advertisers only looking at digital would be kind of slightly of kind of exaggeration.
No, I'm sure. I think today it's all about the added. It's like the cherry on the pie. But coming back to what Big Synergy does, right? you're essentially a production house, and you do a lot of content, which is, how is it? Is it commissioned to a television platform or a digital platform? Or, do you get a brief, or do you just come up with an idea and you say, okay, I'd like to, pitch it to so-and-so?
Yes, I wish we were getting briefs, but I don't think there is any something called brief, because a lot of us, just like consumers, don't know what we want. While we want something different, big, and certainly with much more percentage success return on it, but I don't think anybody can draw out and say exactly this is what I want. Our job largely is, and which is why what our content creators do, they're largely kind of, I call them content visionaries, because they have a good sense of what's happening in the country and across platforms. From TikTok to Facebook to YouTube to television to OTT. They have a good sense of what's happening around this. And even internationally, because a lot of international trends do kind of emanate in India faster than we think. So the job of the creative visionaries largely, along with me, is to kind of get a sense of how the country is kind of progressing or transforming, in this case, so far as entertainment is concerned. And once that is done, we get a good sense of whether the shift is happening, if any shift is happening now or is going to happen in the near future. And if the shift is going to happen, what is going to be our response to that? So there was a time that a lot of quiz shows were more in favor, and then game shows started coming in. And now, of course, the combination of game shows, quiz show, and of course, a lot of dance and music shows. So it's a combination of that. The Big Synergy was the first to launch in India's Got Talent, Nach Baliye, KBC, Das Ka Dam. So Big Synergy has been around to kind of almost launch almost all marquee series in each genre of non-fiction. So far as fiction is concerned, we've been slightly away from it deliberately because our focus was non-fiction. Now, of course, in recent part, my mandate is to kind of do an equal mix of fiction and non-fiction. And fiction, why we are more bullish on fiction is because the fiction itself has got kind of subdivided into genres, which wasn't the case earlier. Till a few years back, nobody would go to a party and say, listen, did you watch that show of fiction? But today, the first conversation people are doing is of a certain show they may watch on OTT, which largely is a drama, fiction, thriller, crime, and all of that.
So is that because also, like you see a lot of shows, I remember, I think about 3-4 years back when, a show like Ye Hai Mohabbatein became 7 days a week, So do you think that's also the reason that, the media platform has actually now made it become like a habit for somebody to watch a show, and hence it kind of gets into your skin? It's like how when we used to watch, Bold and Beautiful and Santa Barbara, it was those kind of shows. Do you feel that's a part of it, or do you think the quality of content is getting much better and it doesn't matter whether it's a daily soap or
Well, storytelling certainly is kind of evolving in India, as is audience. As the audience is evolving, the storytelling is evolving as much. And certainly with the production capabilities, technology improving, you can always produce a much more sharper way, and a kind of talent which is coming into the case, which wasn't the case earlier. OTT is the greatest example of how the Bollywood and the content world has a marriage, and you have a cinematic experience when you watch the OTT series. And of course, the level of delivery is, not 2x, but certainly maybe 5x or 10x in many cases.
So who owns the rights of the content that Big Synergy makes? Do you own the right, or does the platform?
By and large, whoever pays the bill owns the right. That's the thumb rule.
Okay, but if you look at a lot of these formats, like the Got Talent format, or yes, any of like the international formats, they generally, if you look at Big Boss, right? It used to be on Sony first, and then it moved to Colors. So is that because the production house owned the rights, or how did that happen?
Well, certain international formats are owned by the international format companies, so they of course give out and lease out these for a period of time.
Okay.
So there is a co-ownership there, but certainly most of the content that is seen in India, by and large, is owned by either a broadcast or an OTT platform.
So if you look at the OTT space, and before the break, I was just actually asking how many players here are actually from the OTT space, and actually, can you show your hands up for Rajiv? How many of you are from the OTT space or own an OTT app? There were much more people. Where did they go? Okay. So, the question here is, when you talk about a company like yours, that is actually defining the kind of content that people can consume, because you said that you don't really get a brief. So you're actually educating the platform to say this kind of content will work. How much of, what are the triggers for these, ideas? What makes you feel that, okay, an idea is going to work, and how do you go about actually convincing a platform that they should go with it?
See, there are multiple triggers. I can't say there's one trigger. One big trigger could be the societal change itself, how society itself is evolving and wanting to do something different, right? Let's take an example of the heartland stories. If you see Bollywood, the kind of heartland stories which are coming in Bollywood and getting the kind of response that 100 crore kind of box collections. It wasn't the case till a few years back. So there is a certain change that we see, and there's an underlying current in which how the heartland stories are becoming much more kind of, people are embracing it with a lot of affection, and not just in Delhi, Bombay. Only recently I made a comment that there is nothing called the metro audience anymore. I mean, the room full that we have here, while we're sitting in Bombay, I don't think we're the metro audience. We all come from different parts of the world. We'll sit in Bombay, we live in Bombay, we work in Bombay, but I don't know whether we are a Bombay audience or we're the audience of Uttar Pradesh or Rajasthan or Delhi. I can't say we are a metro audience. There's nothing as a metro audience. I mean, the mix, how the population of India actually has kind of traveled within states. And that has influenced the storytelling itself. The other trigger, of course, is evolutions like tech piece like smartphone. Now, smartphone didn't exist till many years back, and if it existed without the data. So the one big trigger was smartphones. Having this into your hand, it was meaning that you could have personalized entertainment, one-to-one entertainment, which wasn't possible earlier, right? Everything was more about single TV phenomena. The same content has to go to a house where everybody has to sit together and watch. So kind of emotions or kind of storytelling or kind of boldness you can do on that content was to be limited because it was watched by the entire family at the prime time. Today, with smartphone, everybody can watch it differently in the same house. The wife, son, daughter, husband, they all watching different content at the same time. The prime time of OTT completely is different to prime time of television. So everything has changed with this device called a smartphone. Further, when the data comes cheap and almost free many places, the explosion which has occurred, especially in the rural areas or tier 2, tier 3, this is where I used to sell mobile phones till a year back. And I saw the demand for mobile phones was not to speak, which was only to watch content. Nobody wanted to buy phones. And despite being SEC, D's, E, strata audience, they were not buying a mobile phone to kind of talk to anyone. I mean, I think that was the last reason they were buying a mobile phone. The entire reason was to watch video. And so the kind of sheer numbers which exist in that part, and you add a layer of smartphone, you add a layer of free data, you add a layer of available time. These are all triggers.
So coming back to the point where you said, there's nothing like a metro, anymore. What is your take with regards to today people, regionally becoming really big? I mean, if you take examples of some of the YouTubers, like Amit Bharana, or you take, Bhuvan Bam, you take the lady Mostly Sane. I mean, I know these are all YouTube examples. Or even there's this guy called Faizu, who's becoming a huge, TikTok,
Yes.
celebrity. Interestingly, they're all community-driven. Those 19 million that follow them know them, and that's their world. What's your take as a production house, I mean, as a company who creates fictional and non-fictional content?
Well, I've always believed that, and this is how and why we looked at it differently between metro and non-metro. It was all about, we felt, from their point of view, it was accessibility and affordability. You take these two factors away, we're just the same. They were no different to us, except that they couldn't afford the device or they couldn't afford to watch the kind of content, and they didn't have access to it. You offer access, which is what mobile phone and data has done, and you remove affordability factor. They become exactly like us. So no wonder kind of the big talents, the ones that you named, are all coming from smaller cities.
So would you create content with these people? Because, I mean, you'll get an immediate fan following or a viewership. Would you do that?
We're always talking to them.
Okay. All right. So another question that I have was, you've created content for TV. You've also now started creating content for OTT. There are some sub-questions to this. One is, how's that experience been? Second is, what's your take on the budgets? Because is it the same? Is it better in OTT? Is it lesser? And why do you think it is different?
I think the budget on OTT, certainly I must address that, is much larger and much bigger than television because, and when I talk OTT, I'm talking much more the SVOD model. So if you want to go the SVOD model, your content has to be really compelling and has to be must watch. Must have is not essential or enough now. Must watch is more the case. In television, just like you have the live sports, right, it's more like a must watch. Which is why there is a premium on the right cost and there's a premium on advertising. So if you create content which is must watch and not just good to have, it certainly will need much bigger budgets because you need a better director, you need a better cast, you need better storytelling, you need a better location and cinematic experience, and all that costs money. It's not the same as television.
But it's interesting if you see some of the shows like Sacred Games or some of these other shows that we're seeing, like I think there's a show called Hostages that's going on Hotstar right now. They are either actors who are from television or they are actors who have not been that great on Bollywood. And so, I mean, if you take the example of Saif Ali Khan, he was silent for a while and suddenly Sacred Games has just picked up his career. Is that an approach that you feel OTT has to take, that it has to take somebody who's, because the budgets may, I mean, you may not suddenly get an Amitabh Bachchan doing Kaun Banega Crorepati only on OTT. Do you see that happening?
I think everybody is looking at, despite what they are and where they are in the career, at OTT. I don't think of anyone who's not looking at OTT seriously. And if someone is not, I would say they should.
But can OTT afford an Amitabh Bachchan exclusively on, and not on TV?
I don't think we're just in the early stages of OTT. What OTT can do is beyond our imagination.
Okay. So I run a platform called Hungama Kids, right? And when I look at the kids space on the internet, you don't see money being put behind, like how a Chota Bheem or a Motu Patlu, which has been done for TV. I mean, whatever content you see on digital is actually, they're also monetizing it on digital. Why haven't we been able to create an OTT exclusive kids, character? Do you have any thoughts?
Well, I think one, of course, there's a general evolution in anything, and I think kids come in kind of, even in television, kids, we didn't start with kids. They came much later. It was only around 2000, 2001 period when we have 2 or 3 kids channel. Till that time, there was only 1 kids channel. So there's a certain evolution. But OTT actually has had a better start with terms of kids content. There is on Netflix, we have a separate kids section. In Amazon, there's a separate kids library, and other apps as well. There's a certain very, very differentiated kids content already. Specific, audience-specific apps, I think that's going to be one of the future trends. Whether it's going to be a genre-based apps or it's going to be an audience-based app beyond the general apps. I think that's going to be a trend. But again, you have to see, everybody is fighting for a little space on smartphone. If you have a smartphone, how many apps do you going to download? There is only space for 3 or 4 big apps that you're going to keep. You have space for 40, 50, 60 apps, and you do install those apps, but the time spent you do 60 apps is minimal. Your largely 80% time goes to 3 or 4 main apps. So there is a merit in doing an exclusive app, but also there is a kind of a disadvantage of doing it exclusive. Therefore, you want to rest on the main app.
Yeah. So when we were talking earlier, you said that Big Synergy is more focused on content creation and syndication, or rather getting commission content for other platforms. You've clearly crossed out the thought of making your own platform, and what exactly is the reason for that? I mean, like, for example, if you see today, all your broadcast channels moved out of YouTube and said that we'll build our own destination because, might as well keep the money within our own house. I would imagine that was the logic. You don't see that?
See, the one thing about any strategy is focus, and our focus is that we want to be the best in a certain field, and we believe we are the best in creating content, producing content. And content itself is the soul of any app or any broadcast. So I'm already kind of serving that soul factor. And we are happy that we are in the right place in the right time. And I think our content creators are very satisfied just doing that.
So do you have, do you hire creative writers, or do you have people who come in and actually submit stories and say, like how you hear about Karan Johar's Dharma Productions, right? Do you have people who you have actually aligned as creative directors and producers, or how does your company work?
Well, we have a very large senior team, which is kind of divided by genres. They're specialists in factual, they're specialists in game shows, they're specialists in quiz shows, they're specialists in fiction. Now they're also specialists in OTT. So they're specialists in each.
And do you feel you need to have a different team for OTT and TV?
I think yes. Because it's not just about wanting to have team, but also people wanting to have passion. Some people have passion for OTT, and they only want to do web series. Some have passion only to do films, and they want to do digital films. And some have only passion to do television. They love television, and they want to be in television. And some are very hard fans of doing non-fiction, and they only want to do non-fiction in their career. So people, we have to go with the passion of the people who work with us. And therefore, I go through their passion, not through my kind of wish of what they can or they should do.
So you mentioned web series. That comes to a question of this whole, habit of binge watching. It was never in there. I mean, it was never there for us till possibly Netflix came in and said, watch it all together, right? And now it's become hygiene. Everyone has had to follow that route.
So much has been said on binge watching, and my view is very different. Maybe I'm going to stand out on this. Ask my 5-year-old daughter when she was growing up. She used to watch 6-7 hours marathon Doraemon. Was that binge watching? To me, it was. My dad used to watch 3 to 6 hours of news every day. Binge watching, clearly. We watch cricket one day, 8 hours tournament, sitting like this in front of a television in millions. Is that not binge watching? So what has changed? I don't think anything has particularly changed.
No,
even the millennials used to watch perhaps a little later in the night, a couple of movies back to back on 2 movie channels. Right. 4 hours, 5 hours. So what is binge watching? I do not particularly understand. If it's about time spent continuously, we've been doing it forever.
No. So I think, in the context of web series, it's about not having to wait weekly to watch the next part of the story, right? And in fact, an interesting thought that a lot of players in the OTT space that I'm hearing is they are now looking at web series because now the parameter for judging, like how you have TRP and all of that, on a web series, it's about the runtime, how many episodes has the person actually bothered to watch, and that's when you can gauge whether it's a success or not, right? And hence you got to make sure that the guy is able to get everything in one shot, and then he decides how often. It's VOD, right? So he can watch it when he wants. So when I'm talking about binge watching, I'm saying in that sense, being able to see a story or a web series in an episodic format, but not having to wait week on week for it.
Well, that's the function of the platform in the sense, when you do a 1,000-episode saga, clearly you can't produce 1,000 episodes and put it on air. OTT is about 8 episodes, 10 episodes a season, so they can do that. I'm sure if television was to do 8 episodes, they could have done it as well, but the television soaps go to 1,000 episodes. So 1,000 episode one, they can't risk to produce without a measurement back from the audience. But so far as audience is concerned, I think audience was always ready to watch as long as you have content to see. It's not they were shying away. So if you do a back-to-back episode a couple of times, they would watch it. If you do let's say, I remember we used to do specials. We had a talent called Bear Grylls. We used to do 5 hours marathon Bear Grylls on his birthday or something. Or we had a cook festival, and we do cookery shows all day long. People used to watch cookery all the day. Or if you do a special Amitabh special on a Saturday in 2-3 movies of his, people will watch 3 movies continuously. So I think the audience was always ready. It's just the content. The strategy is slightly different to an OTT because they do with 8 to 10 episodes a season, and we do about 800, 900 episodes.
Okay. So I have one more question before I'll open it up to the audience. Since you have, in your career before this, you've also handled sales of smartphones. And what do you think of the whole smart TV space right now? Do you see that overtaking, normal television, connected to a set-top box? Or do you think the more and more OTT develops, what's your take on that?
Smart TV, and we used to sell smart TV as well, along with the mobile phone. I used to sell both, and that's the reason I worked there, to understand what's happening in the country. And smart TV, the way it's progressing, clearly in value terms, smart TV should be bigger than normal television in India. In volume, it's still behind, but in value terms, smart TV has overtaken the regular television sales. And in the time to come, because of the pricing, discounting, and competition of smart television, I don't think the affordability factor will kind of restrain anybody not to have it. And the minute a smart television come on your wall and a mobile is there, there's going to be a big rivalry between you're going to watch on the big screen or you're going to watch on a small screen. However, the content guys the apps, etc., they're going to have a great time. So nothing affects them except that the devices keep changing. So you may have, again, evolution from small to big.
All right. I have one more question, but I will open it up to the audience before I ask that. Any questions? Yeah.
That kind of a stark difference, number of episodes run on OTT.
One is the sheer cost of production of the episode. I mean, it's the cost of production of this episode is very, very high. Second, the time taken to produce those 8-10 episodes is also longer. It takes about roughly between anything average, 18 months to 24 months to do those 8 episodes. In television, that's not the cycle. You can do much faster because the scale is limited to one location. OTT travels across. I used to run Discovery Channel earlier. Any show of ours would take about 2 to 3 years to kind of produce from the conception to actually airing, because our show traveled from at least 3 to 4 continents. And the storytelling was such that it had to take its back research. There was tons of research we used to do before that. Then, of course, the production, then finding the unique cast, then their availability, then traveling and doing post-production. It would take about 18 to 24 months for us to do a series. And sometimes even one episode on Discovery would take easily 18 months to 20 months. So some things do take their own time, but that's the nature of the content.
Another question. Delta that exists, number of audiences that right now. Suppose AI audience is very heavy. What is the roadmap of Delta?
Well, yesterday I read a report from Europe which suggested that OTT should touch about $230 billion by 2025 as a market. Today, internationally, roughly is about close to $100 billion market. So OTT, in that sense, is a very large base already, about close to 100 billion and soon to be 230 billion in 2025. So the change is very fast, and which is why to your first question and second question, they're married in the sense that you produce great content, hence people will pay for it, and they will the S-word model will progress. So therefore, the reason, therefore, both your questions slightly marry to each other.
Anybody else? Yeah.
Hi Rajiv. So basically, as a user, sometimes we see the user got very much confused what content he has to watch. So how do you see the recommendations and user personalization will play a big role in OTT?
Well, tech's solving that a lot, right? Most of the apps largely are running through artificial intelligence to kind of tell you exactly your likability to watch a certain kind of content while keeping freshness as much there, because we don't want to make you watch just the kind of content that you watch once in a life, and we think we should serve you exactly that. So there's a freshness and, of course, a lot of similarity to what your typical interest has been in the last 3 to 6 months. Should your interest change, I'm sure the algorithms will change and start providing you differently. But I think tech is solving the problem of exploring and discovery of content.
Anybody else? Okay, last question is, so, we know that today platforms like Netflix, Amazon, they are working with multiple players.
Hotstar, Z5,
Yeah,
MX Play.
Okay. Yeah, I know, the list is quite long.
Well, there are a lot of great Indian apps which are doing a great commendable job.
Right.
We must address them.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, I'm always very impressed to hear about Hoi Choi, actually taking a language and then creating content around that. But that's, while the OTT list is growing, that's obviously also opening a lot of doors for a lot of production houses as well. For someone who's been around for 30 years, what do you say with regards to this? I mean, is the competition good? Do you feel challenged? Or do you feel, more players in the market better?
I think competition is always healthy, not just to push us, but also to push the entire content game forward. No one can have a monopoly on the kind of content which tomorrow audience will watch. Therefore, the more, the better.
But if you think about it, at one time, Ekta Kapoor did have it. Well,
you can have a kind of a stature for a period of time, I'm sure. But I think the way OTT, and we have almost about 32 streaming services, and Hoicho is perhaps a visionary to do something in regional space, like Yup TV did in South, Hoicho has done here. But to me, they're still visionaries, right? There's still many people who are not doing exclusive ones. But I don't think the market is maturing anytime soon. We just at the starting stage of this phenomena. And people are only watching more and more of content, versus where there was a point where they said there's not enough to watch. So the appetite of audience has tremendously increased.
And do you see for yourself, say in the next 5 years, the percentage of content you create for OTT will be more than that you do for TV?
It appears it may turn towards, the balance may tilt towards OTT, but at this time I believe in equal weightage to both.
Okay. Thank you so much,
Thank
Rajiv.
you.
That was great fun.
Thank you.
I hope that was informational enough, and thank you so much.